Recent flare-up of violence against foreign nationals in South Africa, the United Nations High Commission on Refugees has established a platform to facilitate solutions for peaceful coexistence between refugees, asylum seekers and host communities in South Africa. The UNHCR held a specially convened roundtable along with the Moral Regeneration Movement in Pretoria. To find out more, we are now joined by Chief Operating Officer of the MRM Seth Mazibuko. Good evening, Seth, and welcome to the 8 p.m. news. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Seth, the discussion is the first in a series of deliberations organized and hosted by the UNHCR and the MRM to bring refugees and their South African hosts together. What prompted this?
Look, we cannot just close our eyes when our country is going on fire and when the people of the world are actually antagonizing each other. And when our country is just about to be branded a xenophobic country, we cannot sit and fold our arms as MRM. And that is why then when the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees asked us to sit down with them and go deep into the issues that are actually affecting our people, both foreign and local. And this particular one was more, it received more attention, mainly because it became very violent. And then we had to then sit down and remember that now this conversation is the conversation that we actually with the UN High Commissioner are calling it, we are calling it a people's voice. We have gone out today, there was a sitting, a pre-sitting to look at other issues. Tomorrow is the main one. And yes, as you said, this will be leading to a CODESA where we are wanting to call the country into actually investigating and coming up with what exactly is happening. What are the causes of this xenophobic behavior, or what other people can call thuggery?
Now, Seth, what solutions are you hoping to draw out of the process?
People who are going to be speaking are the ones that are coming up with the solutions. Our approach in this with the UN is that now let's listen to how people practically are wanting these matters to be dealt with, or practically how do they want to coexist. That is the main part. That's what we want to get from the people. We don't want to parachute ideas to people. We don't want to parachute, solutions to people. Already today, there were a lot of, in the pre-conversation that we had today, I'm informed because I was in Parliament, but I'm informed by my colleagues that there are already some suggestions and recommendations that are very practical that are coming up, and one can list them if we had more time.
Now, Seth, earlier on you mentioned the fact that South Africa is at a point where we might start being called a xenophobic country. Now, the UNHCR has alluded to the recent xenophobic violence, which we have been touching on, against foreign traders in Gauteng and neighboring provinces, as having underscored the urgency with which this matter must be dealt with. Now, do you think South Africa is becoming xenophobic, and that branding, what are the underlying causes for that? Ma'am, let me just be clear with you on this issue that, South Africa now lately, particularly, we come from a very immoral, we come, as MRM will come from that perspective. We come from a very immoral and violent apartheid system. And we transcended into democracy without having dealt with issues that came from immoral society and violent society that apartheid was. My point is that xenophobia is one violent issue, but there are other violent issues. Schools today are more violent than any other place, that you can see. Families, rape in families, violence, violent protest. Isn't it that now maybe this xenophobia problem form part of that list of violence of our anger as South Africans, or maybe our bitterness? So we need to be saying to ourselves, maybe we need to deal with this kind of issues might be economic issues. It might be, and this is actually militating against our very basic principle of social cohesion. And I am trying to say, when UN is talking about this, is to seek with the UN High Commissioner what exactly happened or what is happening. And then so that after that we can then be able to ask people to suggest and to make proposals. Those proposals then can be developed into an action plan. And this is one of the many conversations that shall be taking place in different parts of South Africa, leading to what we call with the UN, what we call CODESA. We are actually reminiscing what happened when we negotiated this country's freedom. So we are saying, let's get into another CODESA that might point at these issues. But it must start from the people's voice.
Now, when you speak of the people, are you speaking mainly of South African people, or are you speaking of both South African and the foreigners who are basically involved in these scuffles or these xenophobic attacks?
Definitely. We have had a meeting of the very foreign nationals. They were putting their issues, putting their suggestions, and they will be there again tomorrow, putting their issues. And of course, we have been in communities such as Snake Park, such as Mamelodi, called communities there to come into this session, councillors. Tomorrow we have expanded it to also, the police and also the Department of Justice, and we have also invited other government, so that now they must also, today it was purely the communities from both the foreign nationals and the local communities. And then tomorrow we are inviting government and other specialists.
Now, Seth, is it a case maybe of not understanding why these foreigners are in South Africa, for instance, because I'm sure that them having to leave their homes as well to come and become refugees in South Africa, is it maybe South Africans are not willing to understand the reasons behind their being in this country?
I don't want to point a finger, particularly before we get into this conference. I don't want to start blaming South Africans, but there's a point that other people are putting forward amongst our South Africans, that now maybe once we're still busy as South African, RDPing our country, we opened too much of our borders, and then now people are sharing this small cake. That's an issue that comes from the other side. And at the same time, then you say the other argument that comes on the other side is that these people, most of them are African. Why don't you attack Chinese? Why don't you attack those who are in big suburbs? Why does it happen on the poor communities? Then it's an issue to be debated. Is this an economic issue? Is this a social development issue? Is this a social cohesion issue? You can debate. So I don't want to start before we even come and compile the report. I don't want to start pointing at fingers. That's what the point that we're getting into.
Seth, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. That was Chief Operating Officer of the MRM, Seth Mazibuko, joining us.